I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I've played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York, I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast. So Tiffany Vollmer is a true Renaissance woman. She's probably best known for voicing the character of Bulma in Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball GT. But that's just a small part of Tiffany's resume. She was a child model, she's an actor, makeup artist, voiceover artist, director, writer, casting director, wife, and mother, just to name a few. She's also program director at MediaTech-a, a technical trade school focusing on audio and video. She's also the president of Women in Film Dallas. I hope you enjoy hearing my chat with the multi-talented Tiffany Vollmer. Okay, we're back with the Dallas Famous Podcast. Where am I? Farmers Branch?
You are in Farmers Branch,
yeah,
that is correct.
MediaTech
Institute.
Which I just now discovered for the first time personally.
Isn't that crazy? This place has been here for so many years, and a lot of people still don't know that it exists.
Yeah. Well, before we get into all that,
yeah,
let me introduce you, Tiffany Vollmer.
Oh, well, hello.
Yes, my guest today this week. Tiffany, gosh, your resume would take almost the whole hour, almost. But, I mean...
It's only because I'm old.
Yeah, well, no. You're a true artist. You've done many different things. I see you've done makeup, you're actor, voiceover, teacher, podcaster, director of Women in Film in Dallas, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a mouthful right there. Let's start at the beginning. You started in New York, but you came to Texas pretty young, right?
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, my father was a DEA narcotics agent when I was growing up.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I get my acting chops from, because literally, if people didn't believe him, it was his life. So He retired from the government and moved back to Texas after stopping in San Diego for a little while. Okay. But I got here when I was 7, like in 1979.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And, I mean, Texas, so where did you grow up, actually? Where was it in Texas?
I grew up in Garland.
Garland, okay, yeah.
Where our pride is, we're not Mesquite and we're not Richardson.
I had somebody from Mesquite, and I accidentally said they were from Garland. They got upset, so it goes both ways, I suppose.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Competitive there.
But anyway, I feel like, okay, so you were modeling very young, correct?
Yeah, it was weird. I walked into this dress shop in San Diego before I moved to Texas after New York, and I was like 5, and I was still learning stranger danger, and this woman comes running across the room, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, you're perfect. Try this dress on." And I was like, no, I'm good, thanks. And my mom's friend was with me, and she's like, "No, go, I'm gonna go get your mom. Go try it on. And the next thing you know, I was doing these really big runway shows with like supermodels, and it was on TV, and I didn't know at the time that it was a big deal, but apparently it was. And
because you're so young, you just thought it was
I got to wear some really fancy dresses and smile for the camera, and my mom would put makeup on me, so yeah, I dug it.
Yeah, and so I guess that's probably where your interest in makeup and in acting and performing all started. Yeah,
for sure. I did not mind the snap of a camera flash.
Right. So how long were you doing that before that kind of turned into something else?
So interestingly enough, when after we moved from San Diego, California to Dallas, Texas, in the middle of the heat wave, it was like three digits for the longest period in history. And at 7, I was like, what have I done that my parents have moved me to hell? My earrings burned in my ears. I couldn't ride my bike because it was hot to touch. Couldn't figure it out.
Wow.
But I really liked acting, and I really wanted to be a singer. Olivia Newton-John was my idol, and I would write my own songs, and I think none of them made sense very much, but I thought, I'm a great poet, and I'm going to be this amazing singer. But I was very nasally, I sounded like I was stopped up all the time, and I couldn't breathe through my nose. And it wasn't until one night I'm sitting at the dinner table, and my brother's like, why do you chew with your mouth open? I'm like, well, because I've got to breathe. And he's like, you breathe through your nose. And I'm like, oh, right. Trying to breathe through my nose. And my parents were like, oh, no, we need to get that looked at. Like that's kind of intense. So we went, and I had enlarged adenoids, and nobody, they'd never been diagnosed. So when they removed my adenoids, all of a sudden there was this voice that I had no idea would take me places as far as even now. So I'm really glad they got those adenoids taken out, because my life could have been very different.
Yeah. But so when you got them out, were you still not like able to sing? Is that not something that you grabbed?
No. I had been writing songs, and I remember I was like in one play because Lisa LeBac was sick that day, and I got to take her place, and they were doing Little Women, and I got to be the maid, and I got to walk in, and I had one line. It was like, "Thank you, ma'am." And I was like, man, I could do that. I'm gonna do that some more. And so the next thing you know, Trudy Armas, my choir teacher, was like, oh my gosh, I started getting solos, and she was like, oh, you need to come audition for All City Choir. Well, I was a cheerleader. I did some other things. And my mom was like, I'm not taking this kid to one more audition and one more, anything.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
And I missed the audition. And the next day, my choir teacher called my mom and said, I've rescheduled her appointment. She will be auditioning for this choir. She was chosen out of all the kids in the 5th grade to go audition with 2 other students. And so I went, and of course I got accepted into the all-city choir.
Oh, nice.
Which also led to all-state choir.
Right.
So, so my singing career started taking off and got me I was always very interested in musical theater. So, I got the lead in the 5th grade play, y'all. That's what's up.
Yeah, and I did a lot of musical theater. And what's interesting to me, though, is that there's usually like crew and actor, but you're doing makeup. I see you told me you did makeup on some films. Like, I know you've taught makeup. Like, what?
Yeah.
How did you like split off like that?
So, I guess my mother was a painter when I was growing up. So I attribute my acting to my dad, but painting, my mom was a folk artist, right? Which a lot of that is like triple loading the brush and doing things in brush strokes. And it's very, very precise and, very, and so I learned that way. And so when I was in high school, and of course I'm like playing Dolly Levi, or I'm playing, Aunt Birdie and the Little Foxes, or any of those roles, I was had to age myself. So doing makeup came really natural because I was painting with my mom, and then that also led to scene painting as well.
Interesting.
I painted a lot of the backdrops and made a lot of the big signage. I actually painted murals in the walls of my high school. I painted 3 murals in my high school.
Okay.
And that paid off too, because my senior year I got most talented out of like 600 kids. So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
It was nice to be recognized for like, oh, you're an artist, and not just like, oh, you're pretty, or
was there some point during this time, or maybe earlier or later, where you're like, this is what I'm going to be doing for my whole life, something in this world?
I was discouraged a little. My mom and dad wanted a good life for me, right? My mom thought, well, use those skills. Definitely use those skills, but maybe go for like a Jane Pauley, or a journalist of sorts, where you can talk and be on camera and do all these things, but you're a journalist. There's a legit career there. And I'd done a lot of other things in high school, but my senior year I got all the lead roles, and so I knew going into college that there were going to be other people that also got the lead roles in their senior plays, which encouraged them to do it in college. And they were like, well, just maybe not that. So I took some English class, started taking basics, and I ended up in the theater department at Stephen F. Austin for a minute. And then I ended up getting a scholarship at the University of North Texas. So I did it anyway.
Yeah.
I was like, well, here we go. You don't have to pay for these classes because they're paying for themselves.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed my career there. And while I was there, kind of my mentor, she was also an actress, but she ran the makeup department.
Uh-huh.
Her name was Vanessa Dion, and she's an LA makeup artist now and has worked on the Titanic and all sorts of really big television shows. Guiding Light, she's won awards for and whatnot. And she had me work under her in the makeup department. And by the time I was a senior, I was as an undergrad, I was running that department. I'd created an internship apprenticeship program for other aspiring makeup artists. Wow. I was doing really well in school as an ambassador of the College of Arts and Science. I was the president of the drama club. I've always been in organizations where collaborative efforts, people come together and create really cool stuff. So.
Yeah, and I saw in your resume too, like you've been president of different organizations.
Yeah.
Was there some reason behind that?
I think I overcompensate sometimes for learning disabilities and things that I had when I was younger that, I had a permanent seat in the hall. Well, that's comedy. You know what I mean? Like, because I was made jokes and,
You always get in trouble, you mean?
Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, exactly. And so I always try to turn my weaknesses into strengths and use them to my advantage. And so I feel like people were listening to me, and I had some leadership skills, and I was given a lot of confidence by people that trusted me and gave me soft skills like showing up for meetings on time and integrity, like be who you say you're going to be. And I went to school literally from like 8 a.m. till like 8 o'clock at night, because I was usually in a show and I was designing a show and I was running an organization at the same time. And my life is very similar today.
Yeah. So, but that must have been so much fun, like when that first started happening for you.
I did not want to graduate college.
Yeah, I get it.
So I got a double degree.
Okay. But then eventually you do leave college. So then what was the next step after that?
So, my whole life, people have always said, well, you're going to have to choose, like you can't do all these things. And I'm like, you want to make a bet?
It's like
tell
they
me no.
challenged you, yeah.
Right. And my mentor, whom I loved, was the costume designer there. And she was like, look, you're a really talented actress and you're also a really talented makeup artist, but you're going to have to choose. And I went to, this is so funny, I had this woman that did my charts in college. And at this place called Voyager's Dream on Fry Street in Denton. And I walked in, I was like, I've got these decisions to make about my future and whatnot. And she read my charts and she laughed because she knew me. She was like, oh, you're such a Leo. I'm like, oh, that's good, right? And she just laughed and she said, well, you're either going to be really good at real estate or you're going to be a star. And I was like, oh, start getting those real estate license lessons learned. I don't even know where to start with that.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, I had my first professional audition with Funimation. And that came about it's a really great story. Everybody loves, when I'm doing panel discussions at conventions, all of my colleagues are like, tell your origin story. It's the best story ever. So because I was getting a double degree and I was trying not to graduate, but I still had to take that one math class, right? Yeah. So I waited until my final semester to take math. And after 6 years of being in college, I didn't know what I was doing. Calculator. Right. I would sit in math class and draw a picture of me jumping off of a square root into the depths of the paper. I just had a hard time with it. And so I ended up failing my math class. And I was stuck in school for another semester. And I ran into Chris Sabat, who was a producer, director, does all the things at Funimation, does 7 different voices on the show. And he said, hey, what are you doing later? And I said, well, I'm going to be here for a while. And he goes, oh, wow, you should come audition for the show that I'm directing. I'll give you the information for it. And he knew that I had this obsession with Olivia Newton-John, right? And so he's wearing his Pearl Snap shirt, and he goes, and this is crazy, opens up his Pearl Snap, pulls out a dubbed cassette tape of Xanadu and hands it to me. And he goes, well, this must be for you, not knowing that I would run into him, and gave me that tape 2 weeks later, I auditioned. 2 weeks later, he called me back and told me that I was going to be Bulma on Dragon Ball Z.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
And the day that I went in for the auditions, I called him and I was like, yeah, I think I should like study up on this, or like, can I, where do I research the show in Japanese?
Uh-huh.
And he goes, well, I've got a little kind of a sample of all of the voices, but it's on a VHS tape. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, VHS tape. For you kids at home, ask your parents what that is. And he said, the problem is it's in my house and I'm at the studio in Fort Worth. So you're going to have to break into my house. I'm like, okay. And he lived a street over from me, and Denton's a small town. And I went over to his house and lifted up the window to his office and crawled through and opened up the top left drawer. And there it was, that VHS tape. I listened to it a couple of times and then drove out to Fort Worth and auditioned. And I didn't audition for him, but it was a callback audition. So he was like, we've already done the open cattle call. This would be a callback. Mm-hmm. And I'm standing there with Sean Schimmel, who ended up being the voice of Goku, Sonny Strait, who I'd actually done makeup on at a production of Harvey at Denton Community Theater 2 years before that, who ended up being the voice of Krillin and is still a very good friend of mine. And I went in and I read for 7 different roles. And the producer came out and he was like, oh my gosh, it was a great audition. And I could see you in any of those roles. You've got a really great range. Shakes my hand and I'm like, oh, okay, don't call us. We'll call you. I get it. I'm not getting that. I'm not getting it on the spot. And then I didn't even know what role I wanted. I didn't know. I'm like, who's got the most airtime? That's I need
seriously,
job security,
part.
right?
Absolutely.
So the first episode that we recorded was, if you're not familiar with the show, we started with Dragon Ball Z, which is the saga after the origin story of how the Dragon Balls became a thing. And we're on an exploding planet, and the superhero guys that get all the fame and glory, right? I won't get into gender disparity in anime. I won't do it. Maybe later. Okay. But the guys go off and leave me there, the genius, on an exploding planet. And I think, because I don't know the show very well, that was a great voice acting career. I'm like the kid who fell down an elevator shaft.
Oh, you thought that was it?
That was my first and last recording session.
Right.
And they just kept calling me, and I kept going in and recording. And then we went back into Dragon Ball, which Bulma's the main character. She's the one that got the Dragon Balls together in the universe. She's the one that developed the Dragon Radar to get all the Dragon Balls together in the universe. She raises Goku from a little monkey boy to the Super Saiyan that he becomes. She's the genius that creates all of the technology that these guys use through the rest of the whole series. So I was like, I'm kind of a big deal. Like, I had no idea. And even so, you're in a gray padded booth.
Yeah.
I was in a gray padded booth for 10 years. I didn't have a live audience like I was used to.
Sure.
And, it's very technical because the ADR, the type of work that we did, is very different than regular cartoons. Sometimes like The Simpsons, they'll sit around at a round table and the writers will give the actors the scripts and the animators will be in there and they'll, be able to kind of see facial expressions or kind of which way the actor is going with that. Yeah. Well, because it's already done in Japan, we have mouth flaps. And when I started, we were not digital. We were reel to reel. So if you flubbed a line, it was, hold on, let's rewind it, get it back to the start.
Oh, wow.
And go again. So that was, it was a pressure cooker when I first started because I wanted to be really good and I didn't want to lose my job. You get 3 beeps. I have not read the script. It's all cold readings.
Oh my gosh.
And beep, beep, beep. And then it's react to picture, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like this whole other language of like stage directions that are like open mouth react, overcut. So I know that when it goes black on the screen that I'm supposed to still be, right, or whatever she's doing at the time.
God, that sounds like a real specific skill. And I think at this point I would be so neurotic. I would just be so worried.
Oh, but it got to be really fun.
Yeah,
you
got good at it, I bet.
Yeah. And it was always a thrill to be in that booth. And, mucking up with the engineers and, passing your buddies in the hallway. I called them funny buddies at the time because there were only like maybe 12 of us when we started. And by the time we left, now it's a whole nother monster. So it's not the same.
Right. And so you're still doing comic book conferences all the time?
No, I just started doing
them.
Pretty much into when we first started.
Uh-huh.
And then when the show, I don't even remember when my first convention was. I want to say like 2001. I started in 1998. But I did big show, like San Diego Comic-Con was like, what? Who are we? What is happening here? And then I got on this really crazy tour. There was a card game from Score Entertainment. It was the first Dragon Ball card game, much like Pokemon or one of those. And they sent me on a tour. It was called the Hummer Tour. And we went to major cities all over the United States. We would pull up in this Hummer, painted up like the cartoon. So we were sitting in a fishbowl. And when we got out of that, me and Sonny Krillin toured together. And when we stepped out of that Hummer, it was just mayhem everywhere we went. It was super fun.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit, I'm aware of this show, but like, give me a idea, like how big is this in the realm of this universe?
It's crazy. I meet people all the time that were like, no, you were my childhood.
Wow.
You really were. I have a great story about that, too. I was in New York. I was working backstage on a Broadway show because I still did hair and makeup and stuff like that. And I was doing wigs for Moving Out, and I got to meet Billy Joel. It was really exciting. And I got lost. I was staying with my girlfriend in New Jersey, and I got lost on the way to the Jersey Path. And I see these 4 guys getting in a car, and I'm like, hey, you guys know how to get to the Jersey Path? And they're like, oh, we're not from here. And I was like, oh, okay, well, are y'all the band Hanson? And they're like, well, yes, we are. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm in the industry. What are you guys working on? And they said, oh, we just met with Madonna's producer. He's going to help us with our next album. They're like, so what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm here working on Broadway. I didn't tell them I was backstage on Broadway, but that doesn't matter. And I said, but I also do voiceover for anime. And they were like, oh, which one? And I told them, and they were like, that's in our rider. We watch that on our bus as we're going when we're on tour. And I was just like, that was weird that all of a sudden the band Hanson is now shaking my hand and is like
thinks that
overwhelmed
you're a big deal.
that I'm cool. Yeah,
that's great.
I feel like I really made it when that
but you just casually dropped that you're just doing makeup on a Broadway show.
No, I just said I was working on Broadway.
Okay. I was like, okay. I was like, that seems like something that you just skipped over, but okay. Yeah. So you're in New York for a while, or you just? I've worked in New York. I've worked in LA doing production jobs.
Stuff.
I got you. Traveling with work. Okay. So then I know did anything else significant happen here before you went to New Orleans?
I mean, I worked with Tracy Terrell Doyle. I produced my first short film, but it was actually a long short. We had a double viewing at AFI Dallas before it turned into DIF. And that was a pretty big deal to get a double showing at a film festival on the first film that I produced. Yeah. And we shot it all in Denton. It was really great. And I worked on tons of music videos. I worked with Flipside Creative. I did all their makeup, wardrobe, some art direction. I did their casting.
Wow.
I also did a lot of casting for reality television. And if this is going out on Deep Elm radio station, I worked with 2 friends, Frankie 45 and Adam, and they actually auditioned for me for a Mountain Dew commercial. But when we did the Drowning Pool music video, I used most of my friends at Reno's as the crowd scene for that video, and we had a real good time. It was fun.
That's cool.
I was the first AD on that.
I mean, let's skip back for a second too. So did you just hanging out at Reno's? I know that you were working at Freeman for a while during COVID.
Oh, that's way later. So before the show's over, while I'm working as a voice actress, and anybody in this market will tell you, it's not a full-time job.
Right.
You've got to do something else to make ends meet. So in between production gigs, I worked at the Barley House. I worked at it when I was on Knox Henderson. I was there for the Carter days, the Trey Johnson days. I was there for, Death Ray Davy. I mean, I knew then what it was, but I don't think they knew then what this thing was that we had.
Right.
Between Barley House and Muddy Waters, I got to see some of the best music that Dallas has ever been able to crank out.
Huh.
And, coming from the University of North Texas, where, we had jazz music, I dated a jazz guitar player for 10 years, So if I was going to be slinging drinks and, carrying trays and all that, I was going to do it in an environment where I could listen to really great music.
Sure.
And then I even stayed with them when we moved to the new location off SMU Boulevard.
Okay.
Into where the Green Elephant used to be. So I go way deep back with not only acting and makeup, but I really love the music scene here in Dallas as well.
That's cool. Yeah, that's what drew me to Dallas for sure.
Yeah.
But then why did you go to New Orleans?
So the show was over,
Okay.
and I was free to move about the country for the first time in 10 years. And I was going to go to LA and go to makeup school there. But I had a friend in New Orleans that was like, dude, I look around the city and there's costumes and makeup and glitter, and you can wear a tutu on a Tuesday for no reason, and people are taking your picture and high-fiving you, which is not something that is shined upon in Dallas, right?
Yeah.
You walk out with a tutu and some crazy makeup and, fluorescent eyelashes, and people are like, oh, where is she going?
Yeah, maybe not as much now, but probably then, yeah.
But yeah, at that time. So it was very conservative from my standpoint. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. And I did that for 8 years. And I did all the things I did in Dallas, but I just did it with a different group of like-minded, crazy circus people. It's really the only way you can describe New Orleans.
Right. And you came back with a few new life changes after that.
Yes. So one of those things, you're going to have to choose, or, I would try to prove, not try, but I would just prove people wrong, right? So they told me I could never have children. And I'd met my husband, and we were in love, and we were courting each other. Like, he was like legit, like we were going on dates, and we did Mardi Gras together, and we have the same costume taste. He had like I lived in an art studio, and he had a whole closet full of costumes. And it just made sense, even when we got married, that the person that did our wedding was like, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to bring together these two lovely, amazing costume collections. And that's what we were known for. My husband is famous in his own right in New Orleans, and is making a name for himself here.
Yes,
Mr.
I love
Johnny Woodstock.
Love Johnny. Yes.
He manages up at the Granada Theater and is on KNON. KNON now, doing a New Orleans radio show. He had 2 radio shows in New Orleans on WWOZ radio, which is broadcast all over the world. So when I got pregnant, after they said I couldn't have children, we got gifts from all over the world, from people sending Johnny Woodstock's baby.
Oh, that's sweet.
So yeah, I went there. I went to New Orleans to meet my husband and have a baby.
I feel like a lot of people say that, right?
Yeah. So I knew that when I had this child, although I love New Orleans, I was traveling for work, because you can't, unless you're like a part of a big film crew, and then that's over. $12 an hour to work somewhere is not going to sustain, it's just hard to find work there.
Sure.
So, and I wanted my parents to know my kids, so I was excited to move back to Dallas. And I called my old business partner, who was running MediaTech at the time. She was the president, Tracy Terrell Doyle, with T Squared. We worked together before I moved. And I said, man, I got to come grow some roots. I need to be with my parents. I will scrub your toilets. And she was like, no. This is awesome. I need you to come write the acting for media and master makeup artistry programs at MediaTech.
Wow.
So for about 6 months, I drove with a baby in the back seat of my car, 8 hours to and from Dallas to New Orleans, and I wrote these programs. I got them accredited, and now I'm the department chair and instructor for both.
Wow, that's great. That's a great reason to come back. A great thing to come back with. I mean, the family was here. That's like we're going to come back anyway. Let's take a second. Tell me a little bit about Women in Film Dallas.
So when I moved back and I was working at MediaTech, which I can't wait for you all to come and take a tour and see the amazing facilities we have here. I wanted to get back to people in the industry. And so I started going to Women in Film meetings And then the next year, I was asked to be membership chair. And then the president that I took over for, Alicia Pasquale, had been doing it for 3 years. And they wanted to focus, her and her vice president wanted to focus more on the film festival, the Topaz Film Festival, that Women in Film hosts every year. We raise money for scholarships, for scholastic scholarships and finishing grants for filmmakers. And I'm always one of those, like, if I can give back to the community, if I can mentor somebody or let them know, I've had a really great life, you know, and until I had my kid, I was like, well, what am I going to do next? I feel like I've done everything that I want to do. And she's given me a new, a new peak of life and new opportunities and new challenges. So it was important for me to be in a group of women that understood that sometimes stepping out of the business for a while to raise your kid, or needing a babysitter, or, juggling a schedule. And I found a group of like-minded women, and then I was asked to consider the office of president, and I did that. And then the next year, I thought I was crazy, but I did it again. And then I just recently was elected for another 2-year term. So I am there until 2024. And, we were trying to keep that organization afloat after coming out of a pandemic, a global pandemic. So I love that I'm in a position where I get to work with the Dallas Producers Association and all of the leadership of people that work in the industry here in Dallas, and Dallas Creative Industries as well. We have a new film commissioner that I've already met with, and I'm super excited to see what happens for our industry here.
Cool. Yeah, you said something interesting, because I mean, I've been in and out of artistic endeavors, and like when I first was doing it, I was young and I was of the mind like you should only be doing art, nothing else. And then
I went through that.
Yeah, and like now that I'm older, it's really clear that it's important to step away. It's important to be doing things that are not artistic.
I had imposter syndrome big time.
Yeah.
Like I was like, they got it wrong. Like I'm not, maybe they won't even air that show that I was on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, because it's like you work really hard, but then when you get these jobs, sometimes it's like, well, how did I get that job from this work? And like, wait a minute, I'm just in this, like you said, this little room, like I don't have any feedback. Like, am I even doing anything good?
Well, and it works with my ADD, right? Because I'll go make a movie for a while, and then I started a theater company. I worked for the Hub Theater down in Deep Ellum for 3 years, was part of their ensemble cast, and did makeup and hair for them as well. And I've just done, and then it's like, well, it's time to go make a movie. Yeah, let's go make a film. Or, I'm going to live in commercial land for a while and do some commercials and make some money really quick. And then,
sure.
Whatever.
And then, so your podcast, that's part of Women in Film, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we are sponsored also by MediaTech. We do our podcasts here. And one of the great things about MediaTech, well, one of the many great things, is that our students are always looking for projects to get involved with.
Sure.
So we have students that produce the Women in Film podcast. We're Just Saying. Has nothing to do with Dragon Ball Z Super Saiyans. It's just me and Gail, my vice president, who is an amazing actress. She's on the board with SAG-AFTRA, and she's kind of the straight guy, and I'm kind of like the, still sitting out in the hall like I did in middle school and high school.
I watched some of one of the podcasts. It seemed like you're giving a lot of advice to young performers, young filmmakers.
Yeah, I mean, our mission really is to empower, promote, and mentor, and we like to see women that are doing great things in Dallas, much like you're doing. Thank you very much. And putting them in the hot seat and showing other women the career path that these ladies have trailblazed for us.
Right.
And just celebrating women and their accomplishments in a male-dominated industry, because that's what's up.
I mean, that's been one of my challenges, is finding women who...
I have a huge list for you.
I'm aware that there is a bunch, and I'm like, it's just about, I think when I started, I was like, what's Dallas famous mean? And I'm like, it means a lot more than I even thought it did at first. There's a lot of people, that definition is a lot bigger than I thought. What else do you have coming up?
Well, I had a very busy year last year. I produced 4 films, 3 shorts and 1 feature. One feature I was a coordinating producer on, and then I'm also in. And it's opposite, well, not opposite, but it's starring Louis Mandylor, who is Costas Mandylor's brother. I did a short dog film where I voiced the voice of a dog that is now in the hands of the daughter from Modern Family. I produced another film that my daughter and I were in, starring James Tupper, called The Stranger.
Mm-hmm.
We had our big LA premiere at the LA Shorts Film Festival. We also won the Newport Film Festival Audience Award and Beverly Hills Audience Award, and now in development, hopefully, for a television show. And then I don't know, I produced something else. And I love to production design as well, using all of the skills from my design degree and loving art and creating things. And I I production designed 2 proof of concept television series that will hopefully get picked up and developed here in Dallas.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. And I guess just to close it out, if somebody wants to take part in the Women in Film Dallas.
Yes, please go to our website at www.wifdallas.org. You can reach me at tiffany@mediatech.edu. You can reach me at president@wifdallas.org. And you can find me at Lakewood Landing or the Cock and Bull or the All Good Cafe or St. Pete's Dancing Marlin. I like mom and pop shops. And
sound like you're a Deep Ellum,
East Dallas girl.
East Dallas.
Yes.
Yep. Same. I love it. Yes. All right. Hey, thanks again, Tiffany, for sitting down with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
We're looking forward to all the great projects out there.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank Tiffany Vollmer for being my guest, as well as hosting us over at MediaTech for this interview. Salim Nuralib gave us our theme song, Unstoppable. You can check out the Dallas Famous podcast every week, Sundays and Tuesdays on Deep Ellum Radio at 1 p.m., and then on all the podcast places. Check us out next week.